The rain fell in slow, silver sheets, each drop catching the dim glow of the streetlights like falling stars. The air was heavy, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and distant jasmine from a garden no one could see. Keanu Reeves had been walking back from a small cafe, the hood of his jacket pulled low, hands deep in his pockets, lost in his own quiet thoughts. But then he stopped. It wasn't the rain that made him pause. It was the figure standing at the far end of the street, motionless. She wasn't holding an umbrella. Her hair was wet, clinging to her face. The streetlight above her flickered, casting her in brief shadows and pale gold light. Her eyes were fixed on the ground, but there was something in her stillness, something that didn't belong to the ordinary. Keanu felt his heartbeat change. He knew who she was. Not because she was famous, but because her presence carried a weight you didn't forget. Ana de Armas. Yet this was not the glamorous woman people saw in magazines or on screens. This was someone stripped of every layer of performance, standing in the cold rain, alone. He hesitated. People often hesitate when they sense pain they don't fully understand. Part of him told himself to keep walking. After all, he didn't know what had brought her here, and maybe she wanted to be alone. But the other part of him, the part that had carried him through his own quiet storms, refused to move on. He took a step toward her. The sound of his boots splashing in shallow puddles reached her, and slowly she lifted her head. Their eyes met for the first time that night. There was no recognition in her gaze, no smile of acknowledgement, no flicker of surprise. Only a quiet exhaustion, as if she had been standing there for years, not minutes. "You're going to get sick," Keanu said softly. His voice was steady but gentle, like he was speaking to a wounded animal that might run if startled. She didn't answer. The rain tapped harder against the street, blurring the edges of everything. Keanu moved closer until he stood just a few steps away. "Is someone coming for you?" he asked. Her lips parted, but her voice was faint, almost lost to the rain. "No one's coming." There was something in those 3 words that reached inside him. No one's coming. It wasn't just about tonight. It was about something much larger. He took off his jacket and held it toward her. "Take this." She shook her head, but he didn't move his arm away. After a moment, she took it, slipping into the warmth that still held the shape of his shoulders. She pulled it around herself and looked down, as if she didn't trust her voice to speak again. Keanu glanced around. The street was empty. The cafe he had come from was a block away, its windows glowing faintly in the distance. "Let's get you somewhere warm," he said. For a second, he thought she would refuse again. But then, without a word, she took a small step toward him. They walked in silence, the rain softening around them, the night holding its breath. When they reached the cafe, Keanu opened the door for her. The warmth and light inside felt almost unreal after the cold street. They sat at a corner table, away from the few late-night customers. The waitress brought them hot tea without asking, perhaps sensing the quiet urgency between them. Anna wrapped her hands around the cup, not drinking yet, just letting the heat seep into her fingers. Keanu waited. He didn't ask why she had been there. He didn't push. Sometimes silence is the only safe space for someone to step into. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't think anyone would stop." "Most people don't," he replied. "But that doesn't mean they shouldn't." Her eyes lifted to meet his again, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something. Maybe gratitude, maybe disbelief. But there was still a wall there. He could feel it. And Keanu knew walls take time to lower. What he didn't know was that this small moment, him stopping in the rain, would be the first thread in a chain that would pull them both into a story neither could have predicted. A story of hidden grief, unexpected kindness, and choices that would change the direction of their lives forever. And in that warm cafe, with rain still clinging to their clothes, they were only at the very beginning. The rain had slowed, but the sound of it still clung to the windows of the cafe like a memory that refused to leave. The steam from Anna's tea rose in slow spirals, catching the faint light overhead. Keanu sat across from her, watching without staring, giving her space but also making sure she didn't disappear into the weight of her own thoughts. She had barely spoken since they sat down. It didn't bother him. He knew silence could be safer than words, especially for someone who seemed to be holding something fragile inside. Finally, she took a slow sip of the tea. Her hands trembled just slightly, enough for him to notice, but not enough for her to admit it. "You don't have to stay," she said quietly. "I'm fine now." He tilted his head, his expression calm. "You don't look fine." Anna gave a small breath of what might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You're very direct." "Only when it matters," he replied. "And right now, it matters." Her eyes flickered as if she wasn't sure whether to feel comforted or exposed by his honesty. She looked away, out the window, where the street was washed in silver from the rain. "It's strange," she said softly. "You can be surrounded by people, but still feel like you're standing in the rain alone." Keanu leaned forward slightly. "Maybe it's not about who's around you," he said. "Maybe it's about who actually sees you." She was quiet for a moment, as if turning his words over in her mind. Then the door to the cafe opened, and a cold gust of wind swept in with two strangers, a man in a dark coat and a woman in a red scarf. Anna's posture changed instantly. Her shoulders tightened, her gaze dropped to the table. Keanu noticed. The man glanced around the cafe, and when his eyes landed on Anna, there was something sharp in his expression, something that made Keanu's own instincts shift. Anna spoke under her breath. "I can't be here." She began to rise, but Keanu reached out, not grabbing her, just placing his hand palm down on the table between them, a silent signal to slow down. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. Without another word, Keanu stood, dropping a few bills on the table. They stepped out into the night again. The rain had lightened to a mist, but the air carried that strange tension, like the city itself was holding its breath. They walked for a while, their footsteps echoing against the quiet streets. Neither of them spoke until they turned onto a narrow lane lined with old brick buildings. Keanu stopped under a small awning and looked at her. "You know them," he said. Anna hesitated, then nodded. "I wish I didn't." There was a pause, and then she added, "He's not dangerous in the way you think. But he knows things about me I wish no one did." Keanu didn't press for details. Instead, he said, "You don't have to explain everything tonight. But you should know, I'm not the kind of person who walks away when someone's in trouble." Her eyes softened, but there was still a flicker of caution there. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not yet," he said, "but I know what it's like to stand in the rain alone." The streetlight above them buzzed faintly. She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. In the distance, the sound of footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, drawing closer. Anna glanced over her shoulder, her breath catching. Keanu stepped forward slightly, putting himself between her and the sound. The rain may have stopped, but the night still felt like a storm. The footsteps were steady, unhurried, but each one carried an edge that cut through the quiet street. The sound bounced off the brick walls, making it impossible to tell exactly how far away the person was, or if there was more than one. Anna's breath was shallow. Keanu could feel her tension beside him like static in the air. He didn't turn to look immediately. Instead, he stepped closer to the mouth of the alley ahead, guiding her with a light touch on her arm. "This way," he murmured. They moved quickly, but without running. He knew sudden movement could trigger pursuit, and something about the rhythm of those footsteps told him they weren't random. Whoever it was already knew where they were. The alley opened into a small courtyard between two old apartment buildings. A single light flickered above a door, casting long, uneasy shadows across the wet pavement. Keanu stopped, positioning himself so he could see the entrance they had come from. The footsteps stopped too. Anna's eyes darted toward the sound, then back to him. "He's here," she whispered. Keanu's voice was calm, almost quiet enough to be lost in the night. "You're safe." A tall figure stepped into the courtyard. He wore the same dark coat from the cafe, his hair slick from the rain, his expression unreadable. His hands were in his pockets, but Keanu's eyes didn't leave them for a second. "You left in a hurry," the man said, his voice smooth but carrying an undertone that made the hair on the back of Keanu's neck rise. "Anna, we weren't finished talking." She stiffened but didn't move from Keanu's side. "We were finished a long time ago," she said, her voice firm, even though he could hear the strain beneath it. The man's gaze slid to Keanu. "And you are?" "Someone who doesn't like seeing people cornered in the rain," Keanu said evenly. A small smile, more a twitch than anything, crossed the man's face. "She can make her own choices." "And she's making one right now," Keanu replied. "She's leaving with me." For a moment, no one moved. The rain's soft hiss filled the space between them. Then the man took a slow step forward. "Be careful, Reeves. You have no idea what you're stepping into." Keanu didn't blink. "Then maybe you should explain it to me." The man's eyes lingered on him for a beat longer, then shifted back to Anna. "You can't run forever," he said. And with that, he turned and walked back the way he came, his footsteps fading into the night. Anna let out a breath she'd been holding. Her shoulders slumped slightly, and she leaned back against the wall. Keanu stayed quiet for a moment, giving her space. Then he asked, "Do you want to go somewhere safe tonight?" She nodded, almost reluctantly. He led her out of the courtyard, his pace steady, his mind already turning over the possibilities of what had just happened. This wasn't a random encounter. It was part of something bigger, something that had roots deeper than a rainy night. When they reached a small side street, Anna finally spoke again. "He used to be someone I trusted, but he keeps things I can't let out into the world, and he's not going to stop until—" She cut herself off, her jaw tightening. "Until what?" Keanu asked. "Until I give him what he wants," she said, and the way she said it made Keanu realize it wasn't money, it wasn't fame. It was something far more dangerous. They walked without speaking for several blocks, the city around them slowly quieting as the hour grew later. Neon lights reflected in puddles, fractured into colors by the rainwater. Every few steps, Keanu glanced over his shoulder, scanning for movement. The man from the cafe was gone, but the unease he left behind hadn't faded. Finally, they stopped beneath the glow of a lone streetlight at the edge of a small park. The wet leaves glistened, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. Keanu turned to face her. "I can't help you if I don't understand," he said quietly. "You don't have to tell me everything, but you need to tell me enough." Anna's gaze was on the ground. Her wet hair clung to her face, and for a long moment, she didn't move. Then she said, "There's a recording." Keanu waited. "It's not about me," she continued. "It's about someone powerful. If it comes out, it could destroy a lot of lives. He has it, and he wants me to help him trade it for something even worse." Her voice broke slightly on the last word, but she steadied herself. Keanu didn't ask who the someone powerful was. Instead, he asked, "Why does he think you'll give him what he wants?" "Because he thinks I'm still afraid of him," she said. "Because for a long time I was." There was a silence between them, broken only by the drip of water from the streetlight. "And now?" Keanu asked. She lifted her eyes to his. Now, I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't stop him. Keanu studied her expression. She wasn't just scared for herself, she was scared for others. And that meant whatever she was caught in, it wasn't just a private war. Where's the recording? He asked. She hesitated. Hidden. Somewhere he can't reach it yet. But if he keeps following me, he will. Keanu nodded slowly. Then we don't wait for him to come to you. We go to him. Her brow furrowed. You don't even know what he's capable of. I don't need to, Keanu said. I just need to know what's right. For the first time since they met, something softened in her expression. Not relief exactly, but the faint recognition that she wasn't standing alone anymore. But before she could speak, movement caught Keanu's eye. A figure was leaning against a lamppost on the far side of the park. Too far to make out details, but close enough to be watching. Keanu shifted his stance slightly, positioning himself so he blocked Anna's view. We're leaving, he said calmly. Is it him? She asked. Maybe, Keanu said. But either way, we don't give him a chance to close the distance. They crossed the park quickly, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the wet grass. The figure didn't follow, at least not immediately, but the feeling of being hunted stayed with them. By the time they reached a quiet residential street, Keanu had made a decision. You're staying at my place tonight, he said. It's not far. It's safe. Anna hesitated, then gave a single nod. She didn't thank him, not because she wasn't grateful, but because gratitude felt too small for what was happening. They walked in silence until his apartment building came into view, a modest brick structure with warm light spilling from the windows. But as they reached the door, Keanu stopped. His instincts, sharp from years of life teaching him when to listen to the quiet, told him something was wrong. The lock on the door had been scratched. Fresh. He turned to Anna. Stay behind me. And when they stepped inside, the air carried that subtle shift that only comes when someone has been where they shouldn't. The apartment was dim, lit only by the soft glow from the street lamps outside filtering through the blinds. Keanu didn't move quickly. Instead, he closed the door silently behind them, his hand still on the knob as he listened. The air was wrong, not in an obvious way, no sound, no shadow moving, but wrong in that subtle, instinctive way you can't explain. Stay here, he whispered to Anna, nodding toward the small space just behind the coat rack. She didn't argue. Keanu stepped forward, his shoes quiet on the hardwood. He moved down the hallway, scanning each doorway. The kitchen was empty, the small guest room untouched. But when he reached the living room, he saw it. The smallest detail, but enough to confirm what his instincts had already told him. One of the picture frames on the shelf was tilted at an angle. He never left it like that. He moved closer. The frame had been shifted because someone had been looking behind it. Anna appeared in the doorway, her voice low. Is someone still here? Maybe not, he said. But they were here recently, and they were looking for something. She swallowed hard. Looking for me. Keanu didn't correct her. She was probably right. He checked the rest of the apartment. No signs of forced entry beyond the scratched lock, but subtle traces of movement. Objects slightly out of place, a chair turned differently, a cabinet left ajar. Whoever had been here knew how to move quietly. When he returned to the living room, Anna was standing near the window, staring out at the rain. If they found this place, she said, there's nowhere I can go. There's always somewhere, Keanu replied. But first, we make sure they can't get to you again. She turned to him, her expression tense. Keanu, you don't have to be part of this. I'm used to being on my own. He shook his head. Maybe that's the problem. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain tapped against the window, and somewhere in the distance, a car engine started. "We should leave," Keanu said finally. "Tonight." "Where?" "Someplace they won't expect. But before we go—" He glanced toward the small desk in the corner, where a locked drawer held things he didn't use often: papers, spare keys, and a few tools that could come in handy. He retrieved a small metal box from the drawer and set it on the table. Anna watched as he opened it, revealing a compact flashlight, a phone without a SIM card, and a folded piece of paper with a list of numbers. "This isn't my first time dealing with people who don't knock before they come in," he said. Anna's eyes narrowed slightly. "You've been in situations like this before?" "Different reasons," he said. "Same kind of people." She studied him for a moment, as if realizing there was more to his quiet demeanor than she'd assumed. He packed a small bag, essentials only, and handed her a dark hoodie. "Put this on. Keep the hood up until we're out of the neighborhood." 10 minutes later, they slipped out the back entrance of the building, avoiding the main street. The rain had eased into a fine mist, the world quiet except for the distant hum of the city. But as they turned onto a side street, Keanu stopped abruptly. Across the road, parked beneath a flickering streetlight, was a black sedan. The engine was off, but he could see the faint glow of someone's cigarette inside. Anna's breath caught. "It's him!" Keanu didn't hesitate. He took her hand, not out of romance, but to keep her close, and pulled her into the shadow of a narrow alley. "We can't go the way we planned," he whispered. "Then what do we do?" she asked. He looked at her, his voice steady but low. "We make them follow us somewhere they'll regret." The rain thickened, turning the street into a blurred wash of shadows and glistening reflections. Keanu and Anna moved quickly but without running, their footsteps quiet as they slipped deeper into the city's back streets. The glow from the black sedan followed at a slow, careful pace, never too close, never too far. Anna's hood hid most of her face, but he could feel her tension through the way she walked, her breaths quick but controlled. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "Someplace they'll think is an advantage," he said. "But it'll be ours." He led her through an unlit passageway between two shuttered shops, emerging into a stretch of old industrial buildings by the river. The air smelled of wet metal and oil. No one came here this late. They reached a large warehouse with rusted doors and shattered windows. Keanu guided her inside, the space echoing with the faint drip of water from the roof. Anna looked around. "You've been here before." "Once," he said. "Years ago. Enough to know the layout." He motioned for her to stay behind a stack of crates while he moved toward the far side of the building. His eyes adjusted to the dim light spilling in through broken glass, his ears tuned to the sound of the car pulling up outside. The heavy door creaked open. 2 figures stepped inside. One was the man from the cafe, the other a shorter figure with a baseball cap pulled low. The man's voice cut through the stillness. "Anna," he called, his tone almost casual. "You've made this harder than it had to be." Keanu didn't step out yet. He let them move deeper into the warehouse, their attention forward. His own steps were silent on the damp floor. "You know what I want," the man continued. "Give me the recording and this ends." Anna's voice came from the shadows. "It won't end, even if I give it to you." Her words froze him for a split second, just enough time for Keanu to step out from behind them. "She's right," Keanu said, his voice calm but cold. The shorter man turned sharply, but Keanu was already moving. He closed the distance, knocking the man's arm away as he reached into his coat. The impact sent a small device clattering to the ground, a phone, already recording. The taller man stepped back, his expression tightening. "You think this changes anything?" "I think it changes where this goes," Keanu said. He picked up the phone and slipped it into his pocket. "See, You were so focused on her you didn't notice the cameras outside this place. Live feed. And now they've got your voice asking for something you shouldn't have. The man's jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Keanu stepped closer, his voice low enough for only him to hear. Try me. There was a long pause. The man finally turned, signaling for the other to follow. They left without another word, the sound of their footsteps fading into the rain. Keanu waited until he was sure they were gone before moving back to Anna. She stepped out from behind the crates, her hood down now, her expression a mix of relief and disbelief. You didn't just scare them, she said. You ended it. Maybe, he said. Or maybe they'll think twice before coming near you again. She studied him for a long moment. Why did you stop that night? You could have just walked past. Keanu gave a faint smile. Because I've been where you were. And I know what it means when someone finally stops. Outside, the rain had softened again, the streets quiet except for the distant hum of the river. They walked side by side, not as strangers anymore, but as two people who had stood together in the kind of night that changes you. And though neither said it out loud, they both knew. Sometimes the simplest act, stopping for someone in the rain, could alter the course of everything that came after.